Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's Jawahir al-Quran with the Juz al-Quran spares. Reading from Surah Ash-Shura. And we have reached verse 23. And we said towards the end of the last session that this particular one, with which we will deal with verse 23, is primarily going to be about the meaning of Ahl al-Bayt, the family of the Prophet ﷺ. Let's read, inshallah, the verse and mention at least some of the prophetic traditions that are related to this concept and the possible meanings also of the verse. أعوذ بالله السميع الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ذلك الذي يبشر الله عباده الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى ومن يقترف حسنة نزد له فيها حسنا إن الله غفور شكور. We did read this before, but here we are going to highlight the request of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For let's read some of the let's go over the immediate translation as much as possible. That rewards the good news which Allah gives to His servants who believe and do good. Say, at the same Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I do not ask you for a reward for this message. No prophet ever asked his people, his community, for a material reward. Indeed, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he passed away, and that's after 23 years of da'wah as a prophet, conveying the message, conveying revelation. He received the revelation when he was 40, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he passed away when he reached 63. So for 23 years, obviously, he could have asked, he could have accepted the material reward. In fact, the Meccan elite offered him wealth, offered him women, offered him to be their king, but they, in exchange for giving up on the message. At any rate, he did ask them for something. What is it? إلا المودة في القربى. Only he asked him to honor the kinship between them, between the Meccans and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is why the meaning of the kinship, is it the immediate family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? First of all, Imam Sharawi mentioned a possible interpretation is that he asked them to respect, he asked the Meccans to respect his kinship, like being a relative. For it has been mentioned by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, and this is a hadith narrated by Al-Bukhari. Al-Bukhari said, that after mentioning the chain of narrators, حدثنا محمد بن بشار حدثنا محمد بن جعفر حدثنا شعبة عن عبد الملك بن ميسرة قال سمعت طاووسا يحدث عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما أنه سئل عن قوله تعالى إلا المودة في القربى. So Ibn Abbas رضي الله عنهما, he was asked about the meaning of this phrase إلا المودة في القربى. And Sa'id bin Jubair, who was present, said the relatives or the kinship of Al Muhammad, the family of the Prophet ﷺ, so the immediate family. Ibn Abbas responded by saying ajilt, that one, like you have been quick, but in the sense of quick with the answer, but it was not an accurate answer. Verily, inna Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, verily the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam, لم يكن بطن من قريش إلا كان له فيه قرابة. There was no family, a tribe, in a branch of Quraysh, except that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had relatives. So the فقال إلا أن تصلوا ما بيني وبينكم القرابة. So he wanted them to respect, to honor the fact that they were relatives. That's one aspect of the meaning. In fact, if you talk about the relatives, the Prophet ﷺ, and that's also something that Sha'rawi mentioned, rahimahullah, that he had also relatives, his own maternal uncles from the Bani Najjar from Medina. Now, there are other possibilities in terms of the meaning, and regarding who were the Al-Bayt Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In one tradition narrated by Muslim, this one, Zayd, who was beloved to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was practically the before the prohibition of adoption, he was known to be like the son of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the adopted son. At any rate, he was asked about the who were the household of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Aren't his women among his his household, the Ahlul Bayt? He responded that verily his women were part of his household of Ahlul Bayt, but he clarified a broader category by saying they are the ones whom they were prohibited to accept the sadaqah after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Zayd was again asked, who were they? He said they are Al-Ali, Al-Aqil, Al-Ja'far, Al-Abbas, radiyallahu anhum. So all of them, so he was asked, all of them were prohibited to, so they could not accept zakah, they could not accept charity. And this could explain why the Prophet ﷺ, in more than one context, he emphasized, I remind you of my family. Like, do honor, do be good to my family. Now, we do have prophetic, they are not really prophetic traditions. We do have traditions that obviously Shiite in nature, like they are the product of Shiite sources. One example is there's this hadith which explains that those who were included in this muwadda, in the qurba, those who included in this kinship, it said Fatima and her children. And if one remembers that this Surah Al-Shura, is Makkiyah, and at the time Fatima radiallahu anha was not married even. So this could not be accepted, and the one of the narrators, his name is Hussein al-Ashqar, his narration is unacceptable. Remember this, not because he's Shiite. If you read the books of Hadith, you will know that there's that category, Shi'i Thiqa, a trustworthy Shiite. So on the one hand, and for a while, the gap between the Sunnites and Shiites was not that great. Of course, it's a serious gap that began primarily with after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, where those who later on became known as Shiites of Ali radiallahu anhu thought he should have been the Caliph, Khalifa, rather than Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And they go back to the what is known as Hadith. The hadith that mentions the itra of the family of the Prophet ﷺ, that I have left with you my the Book of Allah, but also the in one version my family itrati, and in one version sunnati. I'll mention the only hadith that is sahih. In all of these, there are so many traditions in this context. Rather than following the itra, so that there are the only sahih in Bukhari or Muslim in this case is the hadith that is mentioned by Muslim. That's the only one. And that's during Hajjat al-Wada', and during the pilgrimage before he passed away, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the text of the hadith says, أيها الناس, O people, فإنما أنا بشر يوشك أن يأتي رسول ربي فأجيب. I'm only a human being, and I'm about to receive that I'm about to, or the messenger of my Lord will come to me, and I will answer, meaning the angel of death. And I'm leaving with you two primary ثقلين. Obviously, the etymology means something that has weight. We don't talk about physical weight. He said, أولهما كتاب الله. The first one is the Book of God, meaning the Qur'an. فيه الهدى والنور. In it there is guidance and light. فخذوا بكتاب الله. Do take the book of God, واستمسكوا به, hold on to it. Now, the narrator said that فحث على كتاب الله ورغب فيه. So he invited, he motivated people to care about the book of Allah. He motivated them so that that it would appeal to them. Then he said again, وأهل بيت. Now he said, وأهل بيتي أذكركم الله في أهل بيتي أذكركم الله في أهل بيتي أذكركم الله في أهل بيتي. I remind you, be God conscientious when you deal with my household 3 times. So they are not here. The context is that this is what the Prophet ﷺ asking his community, not only those who were immediately there. They are required to respect the family of the Prophet ﷺ, to be good to them, to love them, and to love the family of the Prophet ﷺ is part of the faith. There is a hadith صحيح, it's in Mustadrak al Sahihain, also narrated by Ibn Abbas رضي الله عنه. أحب الله لما يغذوكم, the Prophet ﷺ said, من النعم, do love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessings that He provides you. وأحبوني وحب الله, and love me for the as part of your love for God. Do love me. وأحب أهل بيتي لحبي, and do love my family, my household, as part of my love. This is a sound tradition that requires the love, and if you love, that's the taking care of the affairs, of the needs of. But again, they were prohibited from accepting the zakah. So much so that when one of the grandchildren of the Prophet ﷺ put one date from the zakah, but it was there, so the Prophet ﷺ would distribute it. He told him kich kich, asking him to spit the one date. So even as a baby, as a child, they were asked not to consume anything that belongs to the zakah. And obviously, when it is mentioned that none of the traditions about the Itra is not a source. Okay, it does not include the meaning that they will become political leaders of the community. It is meritorious. The Muslims, the leaders, obviously, met in the shed of Bani Sa'ida after the death of Prophet ﷺ, and it was obviously Abu Bakr Siddiq and Umar radiallahu anhuma, they went to that meeting. The intention of Bakr was that Umar would become the first to be the caliph, but Umar told him at one point, there are details there, give me your hand, and he pledged the allegiance to Abu Bakr Siddiq as the caliph, and others followed suit And even Ali ibn Abi Talib himself, radiallahu anh, also acknowledged the caliph. In fact, he did not become caliph until Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman radiallahu anhum passed away one after the other. And then number 4, the well-guided caliphs, Khulafa al-Rashidin. So Ali was the 4th one. And some scholars they highlight that the fact that we began with that only the hadith of narrated by Muslim is the one the sound one. I'm sure that there are many traditions that I there's no way I can read all of them, but there are traditions that mention the Sunnah without the itra at all. But again, they are not sound. So there are traditions that do include the itra, the traditions that include the Sunnah. Some of them have weak chains of narrators, and some of them have good chains of narrators. And any Muslim scholar, in fact, this is something that is known almost to the average Muslim, that the sources of Islamic law, if you will, they are the book, the Qur'an, the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the qiyas, reasoning by analogy, and this is something that one can, with some details, and the consensus of the scholars. Imam Malik, rahimahullah, accepted the practice of the people of Medina, because it would be impossible for the generation of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ to practice something that widespread, that does not have root in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. I hope this. I did mention previously that things became cultish amongst the Shiites, and the word Shiite is an umbrella. In previous lectures, I mentioned that some of the Alawites, not the Alawites in Turkey, the cultish position reached a dangerous level by divinizing Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. Yes, alayhi salam. Yes, karamallahu wajhah. But to divinize Ali bin Abi Talib. So there are those who obviously their position cannot be reconciled with Islam at all. There are those who are they still have the cultish position and also practices that are unacceptable, like the self-flagellation. And there are those who originally, like the Zaydis, they are practically the closest to the Sunnites. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a'la wa alam. I hope that I did shed some light, and when it's appropriate, inshallah, we'll revisit the topic with Allah Azza wa Jalla. Until then, subhanakallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.